Willie Walsh walked into IndiGo's office in Gurugram on August 3rd. And just before that, IndiGo announced it was giving back all 6 of its Boeing Dreamliners, suspending London Heathrow flights and shutting down wide-body operations entirely. The man who called India's lack of wide-body aircraft a scandal is now running an airline that just gave away its only wide-body planes. This is the most fascinating situation in Indian aviation right now. Quick recap for anyone joining this story now. We have covered Walsh twice on this channel, in April when he was appointed and in the wide-body video where he told the BBC that India having only 50 wide-body aircraft for 1.4 billion people was, in his words, a scandal. Walsh left IATA on July 31st and joined IndiGo on August 3rd, exactly as planned. But the IndiGo he walked into is not the one that was described when he was hired. Because in the week before he arrived, his predecessor Rahul Bhatia made a decision that changes everything. Let's break it down. Part 1. What Bhatia did before handing over. This is Rahul Bhatia clearing up house before handing over the baton to Willie Walsh, a fresh start. That is how one aviation analyst described what happened. Here is what he did. IndiGo had been operating 6 Boeing 787-9 Dreamliners since early 2025, leased from Norse Atlantic Airways, a Norwegian carrier. Under the arrangement, Norse provided the aircraft and pilots while IndiGo supplied the cabin crew, marketed the flights under its own brand and paid for the fuel. Those 6 Dreamliners were IndiGo's entire wide-body operation. They were flying to London Heathrow, Amsterdam and previously Copenhagen and Manchester. They were IndiGo's first attempt at long-haul international aviation. On July 22nd, 12 days before Walsh arrived, IndiGo announced it would discontinue all wide-body operations from October 25, 2026 and return all 6 Boeing 787-9 aircraft to Norse Atlantic by October 31st. London Heathrow will be suspended entirely until IndiGo's own Airbus A350-900 aircraft begin arriving. Amsterdam will continue but on a narrow-body A321XLR instead of the Dreamliner. So Walsh walks in to find his airline's entire long-haul wide-body program just gone. The planes he called a national scandal to not have, IndiGo just handed them back. Part 2. Why did IndiGo give the Dreamliners back? The official reason is a challenging operating environment driven by ongoing geopolitical tensions, which significantly escalated operational costs through airspace constraints, elevated fuel prices and currency pressures. Let's translate that into plain language. First, the Pakistan airspace closure means IndiGo's Dreamliners flying west to London and to Amsterdam had to take longer routes. Longer routes burn more fuel. A flight that was budgeted to cost a certain amount was suddenly costing far more. Second, Copenhagen was already suspended in February. Manchester was cut progressively and then closed entirely from August 31st. Each closure meant one fewer reason to keep a Dreamliner in the fleet. And here is the thing about a damp lease that most people don't know. Under the arrangement, IndiGo paid for the fuel, so every extra hour of flying time from the longer routing, every additional liter of jet fuel at current prices came directly out of IndiGo's pocket. So the economics broke, and when the economics break on a leased asset you can hand back, obviously you hand it back. IndiGo insists this is not a retreat from international ambitions, it is a recalibration forced by circumstances rather than strategy. The airline says that the 787 program was always designed as an interim solution to build experience before its own A350s arrive. IndiGo expects its first Airbus A350-900 in 2027. Part 3. Walsh's 3 problems on day 1. So here is what Willie Walsh is actually dealing with as he settles into his new chair. Problem 1. No wide bodies until 2027 at the earliest. Walsh had called the wide-body gap a scandal. He was hired partly to fix it, and right now, IndiGo has 0 wide-body aircraft in its fleet and won't have one for at least a year. London Heathrow is suspended. Air India will once again become the only Indian airline operating wide-body aircraft on scheduled international services until IndiGo's A350s arrive. Walsh's international ambitions are stuck on narrow-body jets. The A321XLR is a remarkable aircraft, long range for a single aisle, but it is not a wide-body. You cannot put 300 passengers on it and you cannot build a serious transatlantic business on it. For a man who ran British Airways and IAG, this is a constrained starting position. Problem 2. The market is getting dangerously concentrated. SpiceJet is down to 11 aircraft. It has exited Tamil Nadu. It is handing routes back to IndiGo by default. So IndiGo already holds over 65% of India's domestic market. With SpiceJet shrinking further, that number goes higher. That level of concentration draws regulatory attention. The Competition Commission of India will be watching. The DGCA will be watching, and Walsh, who has a history of navigating regulatory scrutiny in Europe, knows that a 70% market share invites intervention. Problem 3. The culture that caused December's crisis is still there. Walsh's first priority when he was appointed was described as stabilizing IndiGo after the self-inflicted operations meltdown in December that cancelled thousands of flights and wiped billions of the market cap. That meltdown came from a crew scheduling failure. The systems, the processes, the culture that allowed it, those don't change because a new CEO arrives. Walsh is famous for his labour negotiations, brutal, direct and effective. At British Airways, he faced strikes, standoffs and eventually won. At IndiGo, he will need to restructure how the airline manages its 12,000 plus employees without triggering the kind of disruption that would give his critics the story they are looking for. Part 4. What Walsh actually has going for him. It is not all problems. IndiGo is still the most efficient airline in India by almost every metric. 65% market share, top 10 globally by passenger volume, a domestic operation that is the envy of every airline in Asia. The A350 order is real, 30 firm aircraft with options for 70 more. When those planes arrive from 2027, IndiGo will have the widebody fleet to actually back Walsh's international ambitions. And critically, Rahul Bhatia clearing the 787 decks before Walsh arrived is not a bad thing. Walsh does not inherit someone else's expensive mistake. He inherits a clean state. The 787 program that helped IndiGo build long-haul capabilities, including network planning, crew operations, maintenance and revenue management before its own aircraft arrive. The training wheels have now come off. The real bike arrives next year. Walsh also has something no IndiGo CEO has ever had, a direct relationship with every regulator, every government, every airline in the world from his IATA years. When he picks up the phone to talk to the Civil Aviation Ministry about ATF reform, they answer. Now, what it means for you. If you had an IndiGo flight booked to London Heathrow after October 25th, check your booking now. IndiGo has said affected passengers will be offered rebooking on alternative flights or refunds. Do not wait for them to contact you. Log in and just check. For Amsterdam, the flight continues just on a smaller A321XLR instead of the Dreamliner. Expect fewer seats and potentially different fares. And for the broader picture, IndiGo without wide bodies means more Indian passengers routing through Air India or Gulf carriers to reach London. That reduces competition on India-UK routes. Less competition typically means higher fares. If you're planning London travel in late 26 or early 2027, book sooner rather than later. Willie Walsh is now the CEO of IndiGo. In the meantime, his airline gave back 6 Dreamliners, suspended London Heathrow and shut down its entire widebody operation. He called the widebody shortage a scandal and he is now running an airline with 0 widebodies. Here is my question for you. Do you think Walsh made the right call by letting Bhatia hand back the Dreamliners, or should IndiGo have kept fighting to make the 787 work? Tell me in the comments. New video every Thursday at 7 PM. Like, share and subscribe and I'll see you in the next one.